how are you working with clients, and how are you helping them build experiences for their customer base?
Yeah, I think first it starts with consultation and education and yeah, kind of workshopping what is out there, what do we want to do, what are some ideas and ways to engage the audience. It still needs to be engaging, it still needs to be fun, it still needs to be all those things that a typical marketing or advertising strategy needs to have. And I think yeah, when it comes to the technology, the actual application of it, I think like maybe a couple speakers ago, there was a guy that started talking about pixel streaming, and I think that was something that I really wanted to dive in a little bit more. I wish he was still here because he really brought up a lot of really good points about creating a space specifically for this law firm and how it helps cut down on travel costs and carbon emissions and that kind of thing. And to me, the pixel streaming, that's one of the things that we're kind of in is pixel streaming versus web technology. And I think from a metaverse standpoint, I think that's going to be a big question that comes up is there's a lot of innovation that's happening behind the scenes when it comes to Unreal and Unity and porting to web, or a lot of really interesting things that are happening behind the scenes in pure web technology and the 3D worlds that you can build or 3D environments, 3D things that you can build, and really I think that's what will help drive the tipping point of metaverses as an industry is that technology has been rapidly increasing over the past 10 years or so.
Yeah.
This isn't, just boom, all of a sudden all this stuff came up. This has been happening for a while. 3D experiences in the web have been a thing. And I think that's at least some way our clients are seeing it is just an evolution of a more immersive version of their website. Instead of it just being a 2D website, now you can have something that engages people and allows people to do more interesting things. And then that discussion of interoperability, that discussion of jumping into a different metaverse like the sandbox or any of the other ones kind of comes into play as well. So that's a little bit where we're looking at it. Understanding what all these different players do, their benefits, their pros, their cons, what kind of happens when you jump into a specific metaverse, what happens when you make your own. Do you want it to be there for the whole time? Do you want it to just be there for one day? How does it need to look? All of those things we have to really discuss from the beginning. It is like kind of creating a little mini game in a ways, and then bringing in this marketing layer and everything on top of it.
Yeah. No, when we talk like what the metaverse in essence is, and why we actually got into it is because for us it feels like it's the next era in end user innovation, because we're enabling people to be more however they want to, whatever experience they want to get out of the metaverse, whether they're watching a sports game or going to the movies, or whether they're going to work or educating, socializing. They're able to now do this in a much more textual environment, and they can actually get sort of a 3D rendering, and they can switch avatars quite quickly, and it feels like they're able to, that's what the metaverse for me feels like, is it's furthering the end user experience and transforming the internet beyond where we are.
And I think that's I totally agree, and I think from our standpoint, it's also thought of COVID was the cause of this somehow, but really I think COVID was the accelerant. These things already existed, these technologies were already there, people were already doing a lot of these things, and then it really, COVID and everyone being stuck at home, or Facebook even changing its name, really kind of brought all this to everyone's conscious that even my grandpa's is saying what is this, what's going on, and it really changed the discussion. But I think I see these things as accelerators, not the cause necessarily.
Yeah, no, definitely. You touched on older generations just there, right? What can we do to, like, accessibility is a part of the title of this discussion, right? Like, and if we want that global adoption, we need to ensure we're bringing this to older audiences. Now, an example, like Accubits is an agency or a consultancy. I was talking to them about how they're using the bands, the Who and the Clash, who, you know, obviously generally would appeal to a slightly older audience, and they're building augmented reality experiences in the real world to help to so that they can come experience what augmented reality is like, and they leave with their ticket is an NFT, but they're not telling people about this, you know, that it's an NFT. They're not using that terminology. They're just saying, here's your ticket. You can evolve it through the event and as you're experiencing and engaging with your brand. And I thought that was a fascinating way to kind of, you know, without shoving it down their throat, say like, you know, come and see the band, you know, and enjoy them in an environment that actually is augmented with technology and introduces you to NFTs. And I just thought that was a fascinating way. I wanted to hear if you had any thoughts on other ways that we can help broaden the user base and bring in older generations who aren't maybe as tech savvy. When we look at Gen Z and everyone, they're onboarding straight into this and they're taking the bull by the horns. But, you know, we want to reach that wider mass audience. So what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think when we're talking about accessibility and trying to cater to a larger audience, it really comes down to being flexible in your code, flexible in your just how you design your UX, how you design the interface. I think creating things in a flexible way allows you to be there for the really hardcore people that understand this and the people that don't. We've done things like make sure that you don't need to click a cookie banner when you come in. So, you know, collecting data without collecting user information, so you don't have to have an extra click. Not having people need to log in. You can just jump right in and start doing whatever you need to do. Even reducing the avatar creation. If you think about some of the metaverses that are out there, sometimes it takes 5-10 minutes before you're actually doing anything because you have to go through this elongated avatar creation process. You got to create a wallet, you got to register, and then all of a sudden you're really doing all the other things that you don't really want to do instead of just having fun or playing a game or learning something. So I think to me, it's really trying to make it open, at least at the beginning, and then finding if the user wants to connect a wallet, if they want to have a Web3 experience, if they want to just, I don't know, walk around or kick a ball or something, then that should be available to them. And letting them kind of pick that journey along the way allows it to be a bit more open and free for everybody.
Yeah, no, 100%. So I would love to take a few audience questions. So just, we'll come to it in a minute. And if you've got some, please just like throw your hand up and we'll get there in a minute. But I just wanted to touch first on the, when we're talking about user experience and accessibility, I wanted to dig in a little further into the kind of whole interoperability side of things and the standardization and all, because this is, you know, when we talk about metaverse in this kind of, you know, term, we're talking actually about oftentimes lots of different worlds coming together. Have you got any thoughts on kind of this, you know, these standard bodies that are coming together, the regulation that's going to support and build, because trust is a big part of the user experience. And I wanted to just get your thoughts on that as a question topic.
Yeah, I think that's been a pretty heated topic, though, especially in some of the ones just a few hours ago. I think when it comes to regulation, some of that stuff's a bit over my head, and I'm not really a blockchain expert in really any way. I do own crypto. I do dabble in this and that, and I keep abreast of what's going on. But I think when it comes to interoperability, regulations, and all that stuff, I think that will need to happen. I wonder how it will affect the industry, because when you have interoperability, when you have I guess mass adoption, it kind of becomes centralized again, and that kind of speaks against the decentral nature of everything we're talking about. How does that impact what we're trying to accomplish? Are we still able to allow people to have control over themselves and their data, but still be able to access all these different places with one central access point? I see things like Ready Player Me being a really important role from an interoperability standpoint, not just being able to create your avatar, but like basically a protocol, like an avatar protocol in a way, where you have these are the things that I like to be, and then when I go to all these different places, maybe it's an animal with all of those features. Maybe it's a human, maybe it's a car.
Yeah.
You know,
Maybe it's
how
8-bit, maybe it's
exactly?
hyper realistic,
Yeah.
but yeah.
How do you take the underlying nature of what Ready Player Me is, and then allow somebody to kind of transform themselves into these different spaces instead of just being one thing all the time? How can we, open that up? So I think that's the stuff that's interesting to me from an interoperability standpoint. How can we build on top of that?
Yeah, wonderful. So let's take a couple of questions. So Nasia, maybe thanks, thanks, Caitlin.
Hi. So I'm wondering, so a lot of things we build in 3D in the metaverse, very often they simulate how the real world looks like. So when we design new things, how much space or how do you think of like, how much can we bring different experiences that we've never built versus existing ones? And what is a good combination? Because if you also bring very new experiences, people are not going to adopt them that quickly. So how do you think about it, or is there any insight you have?
Yeah, that's I'm really glad you brought that up because that was something I was thinking about before coming on here. I think, yeah, sometimes with our clients or with people that I'm talking to, we want to do something that's a bit abstract and a bit different. And I think it's kind of going against, I don't know how to say this without maybe ruffling some feathers, but basically a lot of stuff out there are just walking simulators. You're just walk to this place and then walk to that place and then walk to this place and then walk to that place. And it's really just, a carbon copy of our actual life. And I think that's a bit boring sometimes. Sometimes you need that, and sometimes it makes sense. We also are working on HR platforms for companies, custom places where they can jump in, and that's really necessary, I would say. But then why not have some space that's totally different and completely unique? I think there's a lot to be said about that, and try to get away from like I love complex land, but when I saw that you just literally would walk to their area where you have like the food court inside their complex land, and then it could order food, have it delivered to you. I was like, isn't this kind of defeating the purpose? Like this doesn't. I get it and it's nice, but why can't we do something completely different? And I think the challenge is it's also hard to. That is a hard thing to do. That is a difficult thing to get the client to approve, to get your 3D artists to understand, to get your designers to be able to make this in that specific way. The developers need to be able to have enough time. And when you have a limited budget, when you have real world problems, it really makes that a very difficult thing to do, I think. It's like you want to make something crazy, but then, you really have to do what the client wants sometimes also.
Yeah, I think it's an education and mindset shift as well, right? Like we're no longer like gravity doesn't matter anymore. Like, and I thought we had Arthur from the Somnium space, which is like the full immersive kind of virtual reality metaverse, doing a demo yesterday, and they've invented these bikes that fly now, so you can rocket around the space. There's no walking anymore. What I think is quite fascinating when we talk about kind of end user experience is this, like within especially the younger, sort of Gen Z and younger generations, this creator economy is growing massively, right? And there's almost a demand now for metaverse-like experiences or more immersive experiences where we can co-create. And I think what's really exciting about the metaverse for me is that we're providing, like, a lot of platforms are building tools for end users to build, right? And if we want to drive forward an equitable and diverse metaverse, like, let's get everyone building this. Like, I appreciate clients need to have the walls, and the rules to a degree, but I'm really excited about that from an end user experience. Let's put the power in the hand of the user to a degree.
Yeah, and I think you need a client that understands, or at least maybe takes their hands off a little bit. We're fortunate enough to work with Mini, like BMW Mini, and they understand that they're a cool brand. They understand how people see them, and when it comes to jumping in the metaverse, they really were very accommodating of us coming in with really interesting ideas, coming up with something that's a bit abstract and not just drive on a road like how about a flying car? How about a car that goes underwater? How about a car that jumps and flips and looks like it could crash? You know, I thought,
It's a transformer,
yeah,
like time starts running.
and I kept waiting for the legal department to knock on our door and say, "Why are you letting the car flip over on its side? Like we can't be telling people that. That doesn't make sense." But none of that happened. And sure, maybe at some point that will become a bigger thing, but I think that also allows you to be able to tap into the community. You kind of need to take your hands off the reins a little bit, and that might be a difficult thing for big companies to accept and to take a step back. I think also with a company like Mini, they have such rabid fans. They have communities all over the world that have their own events. So a co-creator space gives them a chance to really elevate that voice in a larger way and to become a bit more even part of what Mini is doing. And that's something that's exciting from my standpoint is how can we empower that? How can we create something that is also custom and specific just for them? How can we then take that as a use case for other clients or have other people kind of be empowered by that and say, okay, that is an interesting way to approach community building, and I see that that's how we have to make that happen.
I mean, it's exciting. Well, I'd love to get to just for a last question on looking ahead at the future and what's next. But I want to see if there were any other questions from the audience. Sorry, thanks, Kate.
Hello? Right. So for Web 2, we finally got the Web Accessibility Initiative. We finally got ARIA. There are technologies around screen reading and motor, various control technologies. How do you see those translating to a 3D metaverse? And do you think we're moving towards a less accessible web?
I
Great
do.
question.
That is a
Really great
and
question.
and honestly, when Miles and I were first talking about this, I thought that's what this panel was going to be about, was like actual like accessibility, screen reading, people who have vision disabilities, or yeah, when we're making a 3D space, it's already hard for somebody who does not have some kind of handicap to access. And I think that's definitely something that really needs to be focused on. And there's not an easy answer for that. A lot of the web technology, a lot of the even porting something from Unity or Unreal, these are in they're not easy to add accessibility standards to. That's going to be, I think, if somebody really wants to jump into something that nobody is doing, that's probably a really good place to go, and something that will be needed. And one of the big blockers, I would say, to mass adoption is yeah, broad accessibility and making it easy for people to access. Being able to use different game pads. Like I know Xbox has their accessible gamepad. Being able to support those types of peripherals, or yeah, when it comes to screen reading and stuff like that, that is going to be complicated because you don't want someone telling you, how do you even do that? That's kind of crazy.
In three
So
dimensions.
yeah,
it's-
that really is an issue, and
Could
I think
maybe haptics as well, in line with like, could that help make things more like?
yeah, I could imagine that there's some technologies that haven't
Mm,
been invented yet that might help with this, and probably there's a lot of innovation that could come in the accessibility side, and it needs it too. That's definitely going to be an important thing. If we're talking about, yeah, metaverses are amazing for people to, understand themselves and to, yeah, better visualize how they feel. This needs to be something that's included for sure.
yeah. I guess also like there is like a flip side to the conversation when we talk about accessibility, that the metaverse can actually unlock, if people are disabled, like people, it can actually unlock new ways to interact that they've never been able to do before, right?
I think there's a really good use case for Second Life. Before Metaverse was really ever talked about, I was at a speaking engagement, and there was somebody who was really going into very detailed. I think it was either their master's thesis or something, but they had hundreds, if not thousands, if not even tens of thousands of people who were physically disabled in the real life, and then being able to jump into Second Life and to find these communities, to be able to kind of, yeah, in some way kind of make themselves feel whole, or to change the way that they want to the way people perceive them, or however they want to be communicated with. They were allowed to do that, and the effect that that had on their mental health was drastic and extremely positive. And I think that is really cool. How can we create something that allows people to, yeah, kind of disarm and make sure that everyone is having, at least an experience that they would like to have, and not maybe the experience that someone else wants them to have.
100%. And I mean, that kind of pulls us back to the pandemic discussion, right? That's why gaming was such a good way for people to come back together when you were so distanced. And well, obviously the world's opened up again for now, but it's that's remained, and that's why we were talking about gaming so thoroughly yesterday. So before we just wrap up, because we've got a break right now, I wanted to ask like one last thing just about looking ahead at the actual, user experience and accessibility also includes like ergonomics of the products and the hardware as well, to a degree. That's designed, and the technology's currently expensive. It's also currently still, when we're looking at true VR, it's quite bulky. Any lenses are still not great. I mean, Apple's very shortly bringing out their form of glasses. The Quest's getting smaller and smaller, but how far away, looking ahead at the future, and when we start talking about adoption, augmented reality probably offers more global adoption. It's in our hands, at least in our mobiles. What do you think the future looks like? What excites you about that future as well?
Yeah, I think it's really hard to say, because we've seen so many different VR, AR, XR examples, and I don't know, I still haven't really seen anything that's like, boom, that's really it. There's been a lot of really great things, but I don't know, still somehow the quality is just lacking that next level, and that really, I think, takes you out of the experience. I think that's a really good question. I really, I'm not entirely sure, because I'm not really convinced about VR. I think AR definitely is a lot has the better chance of being something that really takes off. Like you said, it's a little bit more accessible. You see huge companies like Meta and Snap, that is like their sole focus, and creating something that we can take with us and add that extra layer on top of everything that we do. That's definitely something that I think is something people are looking for and could use, especially as the younger generations are becoming more and more of a player in purchase power and everything else.
100%. Does anyone else have anything to weigh in on that question around the technology, about the infrastructure, or anything that excites anyone for the future when we talk about Metaverse? Yeah, go ahead.
I was actually thinking, I work in branding and marketing, so advertising a big part of what we do. However, as a consumer, I actually don't want to be seeing ads everywhere I go, everywhere that I just be bombarded with all the time. So I'm thinking, is there a possible future, a utopic future, where we are seeing ads that we opt into through AR, for example, AR glasses or something like that, and the rest of the time we can actually enjoy the internet and enjoy the metaverse and enjoy walking around, Fifth Avenue, whatever, and not be bombarded with advertising. I don't know. It's just a
maybe a little switch on the
exactly,
side of our glasses,
like
right?
I think
Turn it off.
I think that's really an existential advertising question, because I think you can see with things like Twitter, or even the question about the World Cup, the world is basically run by the advertisers in a lot of ways. These decisions could be impacted by advertising, and Elon Musk now has to make decisions based on what his advertisers are saying. If the World Cup really was not going to happen. That could have been done by Nike or Adidas. That's just a real, fact. They have that ability because that's where the money is coming from. That's why Facebook is losing as much money as it is because the advertising just isn't there. So yeah, advertising is going to play a big part in it, and that's probably where once they get latched onto something, once that industry finds where it can actually create or really target specific people, then I guess that's going to be the thing. Is that something that means we can opt in or opt out? I don't
Yeah,
know.
I mean, I think from a brand perspective, if I'm opting in actively to a brand and being a following, I'm gonna spend 10x, 100x more money with them. So it's in the future, I don't think that having me being targeted like by hundreds and hundreds of brands that I don't care about is just going to work out. So I think more personalized experience is actually maybe going to bring more revenue to the brands in the future. I don't know.
Yeah, and it could also end up homogenizing the advertising industry a little bit to where you're not being like a big part of advertising is you just have brand awareness and you are introduced to new brands, especially at a younger age. If it's all opt in, opt out, and you only go to, I don't know, the Skodaverse, and that's the only, the only car company you can go there, and that's fine. Is that then limiting your
Then
ability?
I'm waiting for the AI to recommend things to me.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Anyway, thank you so much. Thank you.
Amazing. Well, I just want to say a big thank you to you, Jason, for flying over from Germany and spending the last 2 days with us. Everyone, please do put your hands together for Jason.
Thank you, Miles.
No, thank you very much. This wasn't supposed to be my panel to moderate, so I dived in last minute.
Yeah, you did great. Like I've seen you do great at everything here. So
Thank you
yeah,
very
maybe a
much.
round of applause for Miles, actually.
All right, guys. Well, we've got another just 18 minutes of a break before we're back in here for our next session. And we've got 2 more sessions for the rest of the day.